So what happens when, your best laid plans just completely collapse, like your loudest critics turn on you and you find yourself so overwhelmed that you literally despair of life itself?
Yeah, that is a heavy place to be for anyone.
It really is. And
Mhm.
today, we're looking at an ancient masterclass in surviving that exact scenario. But before we step into the wreckage or the rescue of that whole situation, I actually want to offer a sincere divine blessing over your day and the week ahead.
I love that.
Yeah, wherever you are right now, whatever heavy load you're carrying, I pray you experience a profound sense of peace, clarity, and grace in everything you do.
That really is um, just the perfect posture for what we are stepping into today,
Yeah.
because we are dealing with a text that doesn't just theorize about human suffering, it wades right into the messy middle of it.
Exactly. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are diving deep into the Apostle Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, specifically focusing on chapter 1.
Right, and we're drawing from the extensive study notes in the Holman and NAA study Bibles to kind of guide this exploration.
Yeah, and if you are wondering how a letter from the first century connects to your life on a Tuesday morning, I mean, the overlap is staggering.
Oh, totally. It's incredibly grounded.
Right, because this text tackles the intense fallout of canceled plans, the mechanics of defending your integrity when people are being just completely unfair, and how to handle crushing personal burnout.
Yeah, Paul is navigating a deeply fractured, turbulent relationship with the church in Corinth. So, to understand his actions, we first have to examine his rather radical framework for hardship.
Because he definitely doesn't view pain the way most of us do.
Right. Not at all. I mean, you see that immediately in the text.
Yeah, right after a culturally blended greeting combining the Greek concept of grace with the Hebrew concept of peace, he introduces this idea about suffering that is just completely counterintuitive.
He blesses God, calling him the Father of mercies and God of all comfort. But then he introduces this wild paradox.
Right, the affliction isn't something that is just magically erased by God. The notes point out that the affliction is actually positioned as a tool.
Exactly. And that is the pivotal shift in his logic. The text doesn't promise an exemption from tribulation.
Which is what we all want,
Oh,
obviously.
of course.
Yeah.
But instead, it argues that divine comfort is experienced squarely inside the pressure cooker of that tribulation.
Wow. Okay, so it's not about avoiding the fire, it's about what happens in the fire.
Exactly. And more importantly, the comfort you receive isn't intended to be like a private luxury. The scholars emphasize that the purpose of experiencing this divine relief is so the believer can transmit that exact same comfort to others.
To people who find themselves in similar trials, right?
You got it.
Man, that makes me think of a relay race of resilience. Like you go through something agonizing, you somehow survive it, and you're handed this baton of comfort.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
But the expectation isn't that you go sit in the stands and rest. The expectation is that you turn right around and hand that baton directly to the next person running that same brutal leg of the race.
That is exactly what the text is getting at.
I want to push back on this framework for a second.
Okay, sure.
If the mechanism here is that we comfort others with the comfort we receive during our own specific afflictions, does that mean our empathy is essentially useless unless we've endured the exact same trauma?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like, it sounds like you need a tragedy punch card before you are allowed to help anyone.
Right, right. It's a natural question to ask when you read the passage.
Yeah.
But we have to distinguish between general empathy and the specific solidarity Paul is talking about.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, general empathy is universally required. We should all care for each other. But what the text suggests is that shared suffering creates an undeniable authoritative bond.
An authoritative bond. Interesting.
Yeah. When you experience divine comfort in the middle of severe darkness, it gives you a unique authority to speak into someone else's darkness. You aren't just offering sympathetic theories. You are offering field-tested survival tactics.
Okay, that distinction makes a lot of sense. It's like the difference between someone reading a manual to you and someone who actually built the machine.
It's exactly. Let's think about the corporate world for a second. Imagine a highly successful professional who unexpectedly loses their career overnight.
Oh man, devastating.
Totally. Their identity takes a massive hit and they have to navigate this grueling, uncertain period of rebuilding.
Right.
But eventually they find their footing and secure a new path.
Right.
Now imagine a year later, a colleague experiences that exact same sudden termination.
Oh, I see where you're going.
The person who just walked through that specific fire is the absolute perfect mentor for them. The comfort they offer is incredibly potent because the suffering was shared. They know the exact psychological toll, and they know the way out.
Wow, yeah. Which brings us from the theory of suffering straight into Paul's gritty reality. Because he isn't philosophizing from a place of safety here.
No, not at all.
He immediately outlines a deeply personal ordeal that sounds, honestly, absolutely terrifying.
He brings up his affliction in the province of Asia. And the historical context in the study notes points to a couple of possibilities.
Because it wasn't just like a stressful season at work, right?
No, no. It might refer to the massive, violent riot in Ephesus, which is a deeply volatile situation, or it could refer to a severe, life-threatening physical illness.
Right. The exact details are sort of obscured by history, but the psychological impact is stated crystal clear.
Yeah, the language he uses is jarring.
It really is. He says the trial was so heavy that it was beyond his strength, and it led to what he calls a sentence of death.
He was entirely despairing of life. He literally thought the story was over.
Which brings us to the theological core of the chapter, I think. Why would someone be pushed to a point where they are entirely bankrupt of human capability?
Well, the conclusion drawn in the study notes is that the trial was designed to completely shatter his self-reliance.
Wow. Just completely shatter it.
Yeah. It forced an absolute desperate trust in the God who resurrects the dead. Because when you are looking at a literal death sentence, optimizing your daily routine or trusting in your own grit is no longer a viable strategy.
Which is so fascinating because this flips our entire modern script on resilience completely upside down.
Oh, 180 degrees.
If you walk through a bookstore today or just scroll online, the overwhelming message is always, you have the strength inside you to overcome anything.
Right, the whole find your inner warrior thing.
Exactly. We are culturally obsessed with digging deep and pulling ourselves up. But Paul is assessing his situation and concluding the exact opposite. He's saying, I have absolutely zero strength left. I cannot fix this.
Because modern culture views reaching the end of your rope as a profound failure.
Right. The cultural advice is to just hustle harder or, find a hidden reserve of energy.
But the framework we are looking at today suggests that true, lasting deliverance actually begins at the precise moment human capability ends.
That is huge. Let's apply this to the epidemic of burnout, because I feel like that is exactly what burnout is, hitting the wall of your own limitations.
Yes, absolutely.
People try to hustle their way out of exhaustion, which is just a massive contradiction. We think if we just organize our calendars better, we won't feel so dead inside.
But burnout happens when you continuously try to draw water from a well that you know is empty.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What Paul is modeling is that reaching a point where you physically, mentally, and emotionally cannot hustle anymore. It isn't a defeat.
So what is it?
It is the necessary space required for genuine reliance on something greater than yourself. It forces you to stop trusting in your own depleting energy and start trusting in a source that doesn't rely on your performance to function.
The relief in that concept is massive. You are allowed to not have what it takes.
Exactly.
But here is the fascinating twist, this radical reliance on divine timing rather than his own sheer will. It actually creates some massive interpersonal headaches for Paul.
Well, big time.
It dictates how he manages his daily life, and ironically, his scheduling is exactly what gets him into hot water with the Corinthians.
Right. The theology hits the pavement right at his travel calendar.
Who knew scheduling could be so controversial?
Well, the historical reconstruction shows Paul had originally planned a second benefit, or a second grace, for the Corinthian church.
Okay, so what did that itinerary look like?
His itinerary was set to visit them twice. First on his way north to Macedonia, and then a return trip on his way back south to Judea.
Okay, so he made a plan, he communicated the plan to the team, and then he canceled.
Yeah, he bailed.
And the fallout was vicious. The critics in Corinth immediately used this to attack his character.
They did. They accused him of acting with levity, basically calling him a flake.
Right. The notes say they claimed he was making decisions according to the flesh.
Yeah, they painted a picture of an unreliable, double-speaking leader who says yes, yes, and no, no, simultaneously, just based on whatever is convenient for him in the moment.
The human dynamic here is just so recognizable. The Corinthians felt rejected by the cancellation.
And when people feel rejected, they rarely assume good intentions.
Exactly. They attack the other person's integrity to protect their own ego. We see this all the time today.
Everywhere.
Think of a friend who repeatedly bails on important dinner plans. Eventually, you stop blaming the traffic and start wondering, do they even value this friendship?
Or consider a business leader who pivots a massive project strategy at the 11th hour.
Oh, that's a great example.
The team has been grinding on this project, and suddenly the boss scraps it. Trust fractures instantly. People feel jerked around and manipulated.
Right, so the challenge for Paul here is how do you defend your personal integrity without sounding defensive? Because if he just lists out a bunch of logistical excuses, he is going to look weak.
Well, the brilliant thing is, he doesn't offer a single logistical excuse.
Not one.
He completely bypasses the debate about his schedule and elevates the entire argument. The notes highlight how he anchors his personal integrity, his personal yes, to the ultimate unchanging yes of the gospel that he preaches.
He argues that the message he brings, the gospel of Jesus, isn't a wavering yes and no. In him, it is always an absolute yes.
And by doing this, Paul is stating that his entire life and ministry are built on a foundation that is definitively true. His character reflects that ultimate reliability.
So he's essentially telling his critics, I am not a fickle person because the God I serve and represent is not a fickle God.
Precisely. And the theological scholars point out that all the ancient promises find their fulfillment, their resounding yes in Christ. And the believer's response to that reliability is amen, affirming that it is undeniably true.
So he is demonstrating that his change of plans wasn't a whim. It was a calculated, purposeful decision made by a leader whose life is anchored in ultimate truth.
Yeah, it wasn't about convenience.
Right. And to prove just how unbreakable that anchor is, he introduces this really profound concept about spiritual security.
The passage transitions into a uniquely Trinitarian framework here, which the notes point out is actually rare to see so explicitly mapped out in these early texts.
Oh, interesting. What does that look like?
Paul states that God the Father establishes the believer in the Son and then seals them with the Spirit.
And the language used for the Spirit here is brilliant. The Greek term is arabon.
Yes, Arbon.
It's a commercial, legal, and financial term. When I see that word, my mind immediately goes to real estate.
Okay, tell me more.
It's earnest money. Like when you want to buy a house today, you don't just say, hey, I promised to buy this. You sign a contract and hand over a significant amount of cash as a legally binding first installment.
Right, you put money down.
Exactly. That deposit proves to the seller that you are good for the total amount. It secures the transaction completely. So Paul is arguing that the Spirit operates as God's earnest money inside the believer.
It is a down payment guaranteeing the rest of the inheritance is coming.
Yes.
And that concept changes everything about how Paul operates in the world. Because God has already provided this down payment, Paul possesses an objective internal security that cannot be touched by external circumstances.
He doesn't have to operate out of anxiety.
No, and he doesn't have to manage his image or constantly try to please his critics. This completely dismantles the accusation that he operates on worldly whims.
His decisions are dictated by deep spiritual conviction, not human indecision.
Exactly.
And this internal security is the very thing that allows him to reveal the actual unvarnished reason he canceled the trip in the first place.
Because he finally has the grounding to say it.
Right, because he has the arabon, the guarantee he doesn't need to lead with an iron fist or defend his bruised ego against their insults.
He finally explains that he delayed his visit specifically to spare them.
To spare them. Wow.
Yeah. The relational dynamic was incredibly strained at that point. If he had visited them according to the original schedule, it would have been a deeply painful encounter. It would have required harsh discipline and intense confrontation.
The leadership posture he takes in verse 24 is just stunning. He tells them, not that we have dominion over your faith, but we are fellow workers for your joy.
Fellow workers for your joy.
Think about the stark contrast between that and toxic modern leadership.
Yeah.
If a dictatorial boss today had their authority publicly questioned the way Paul's was, they would immediately force a dramatic, harsh confrontation.
Oh, they would fly in just to crack heads.
Exactly. They would show up early just to prove who was in charge and demand total compliance.
Because a fragile leader prioritizes their own authority and reputation over the well-being of their team.
Right.
But Paul actually holds legitimate apostolic authority.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he founded this community, yet he voluntarily yields his right to scold them.
He steps back.
He deliberately takes the PR hit of looking like a flake, absorbing their criticism, specifically to give them time to course correct on their own. He absorbs the relational damage in order to cultivate their joy.
The scholars highlight a thematic matrix in the notes that synthesizes this entire dynamic beautifully. They contrast apparent temporal defeat with true spiritual victory.
And it is the lens through which you have to view this entire
It
chapter,
really is.
because that matrix is the key to Paul's worldview. If you just look at the surface, Paul's ministry appears to be an endless string of defeats.
On paper, it looks terrible. He is enduring a riot or a brutal illness in Asia. He receives a literal death sentence. Yep. He is forced to cancel his travel plans under extreme duress. His own congregation is openly mocking him and calling him unreliable. By any worldly metric, this is a failing enterprise.
But when you run those temple defeats through the matrix of true spiritual reality, the picture inverts.
How so?
Well, the literal death sentence resulted in him learning absolute, unwavering trust in God. The outward physical decay he experiences is matched by an inward, daily renewal of his spirit.
Wow. And the canceled trip.
The canceled trip, which caused a temporary PR disaster and a rift with the church, was actually a strategic, loving move that preserved their ultimate joy.
So what looks like losing on the world's terms is actually a continuous unfolding victory in the spiritual realm.
Exactly.
When we pull all of these complex threads together, the paradox of shared comfort, the necessary breaking of our own self-reliance, anchoring our integrity to the absolute yes of God, and adopting a leadership style aimed at the joy of others, it completely redefines what a successful life actually looks like.
It does. The synthesis is that your external chaos does not have to dictate your internal peace.
Mm-hmm.
Paul is willing to look weak, to look indecisive, to look utterly defeated in the temporal world, if it means that he is acting with spiritual integrity and someone else gets to experience grace.
It frees you from the exhaustion of having to appear strong all the time. You can hit the wall of your own limitations, and instead of panicking, you can recognize it as the starting line for genuine reliance on that divine, earnest money.
And crucially, it means the suffering you survive is never wasted. The comfort you discover when you're at the end of your strength becomes the exact tool you use to pull someone else out of the dark.
I love that. I actually want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive into the text.
Go for it.
We've spent a lot of time exploring how external temporal crushing is the exact mechanism for internal eternal renewal. I want you to apply that matrix to your own life right now.
Yeah, think about your own situation.
Look at the biggest obstacle sitting on your desk, or the most difficult, frustrating conflict in your personal life today. How does this framework change the way you view it?
It's a great question.
What if that specific obstacle, the one making you feel entirely out of strength, is actually the very down payment on your future ability to deeply, profoundly help someone else survive their own storm? It shifts the entire paradigm from simply enduring pain to realizing you are being equipped with purpose.
It completely changes the internal narrative. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you start asking, who is this preparing me to help?
Perfectly said. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into 2 Corinthians. Digging through these sources and finding these ancient stabilizing truths is what we love doing. As we close out today, I want to remind you that God blesses all the listeners. Take care, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.